The blood on the deck wasn't Kor's. He counted 5 meters between his boots and Admiral Vorthak Krell's throne, and he did not stop walking until the count hit 0. Behind him, tactical displays lit with new contacts. Nobody on the Vreth bridge had noticed yet. Krell's 4 arms rested folded across his thorax, mandibles clicking once, twice, the sound of a predator amused by something small and slow. Kor wasn't small. He wasn't slow either, not anymore. You caught the one species in this galaxy that answers a distress call, he said, and knows what to do when it's a trap. Krell's gold, compound eyes caught the bridge lights and threw them back 1,000 times, 1,000 tiny reflections of the man standing in front of his throne. 600 years of hunting had taught him that prey froze, prey ran, prey begged. This one had walked in wearing another species' blood and hadn't blinked once. Kor set the datapad on the arm of the throne. The crack in its corner had been there since Kessel Station. He didn't look at it. He looked at Krell. Entry 2847C, he said. The Meridian Dawn. Something in the Vreth's posture shifted, a half-degree lean, the kind of stillness that comes right before a strike or right before a species realizes it has made its first mistake in 6 centuries. My sister, Kor said. The bridge said nothing. The displays behind him kept counting. 6 new contacts, closing, and not one of them broadcasting a distress signal this time. Krell's mandibles stopped clicking. That was when the room went quiet enough to hear the ventilation hum, and Kor let the silence sit there like a blade nobody had decided to pull yet. You'll want to know how he got here. 6 hours ago, he was standing on a different bridge, arguing with a captain about flying straight into a trap. 6 hours earlier, the Ironclad's bridge smelled like recycled coffee and cold metal, and nobody there knew they were about to become the first bait a predator species had ever regretted swallowing. Captain Vance stood at the navigation console with her arms crossed, watching a beacon blink red on the forward display. The beacon had been broadcasting the same distress call for 4 hours, a derelict, drifting, dying slow. To any sensor sweep in the galaxy, it looked like a ship on its last breath. 3 other vessels picked this up, Lieutenant Commander Hawkins said from tactical, not looking up. 2 changed course away from it, one still deciding. And us? Vance asked. Sergeant Major Draven Kor stood near the aft rail, out of the way, which was where he always stood until someone needed him not to be. He held his datapad the way he held most things, like it had survived worse than whatever was happening now. The crack in the corner caught the light when he turned it over in his hands. Sergeant Major, Vance said without turning, you're on my bridge again. Somebody has to be right about this, Kor said. Private First Class Diego Reyes, 23, from Houston, leaned against a bulkhead nearby with the specific posture of a man who hadn't yet accumulated enough near-death experiences to know he should be afraid. So we're flying into a trap. We're flying into their trap, Kor said. Different thing. Reyes considered this. What if they've got way more ships than us? Then we make the ships have a problem. First Sergeant Torres, who had broken his nose in 4 different star systems and reset it himself twice, snorted from his console. Corporal Delgado said nothing, the way he usually didn't, a photo of his family clipped inside his helmet liner where nobody but him ever saw it. Kor walked to the main display and pulled up the beacon's raw signal. He'd been staring at it for 20 minutes before he came up here, and the longer he stared, the less he liked it. Run the compression again, he told Hawkins. Hawkins ran it. The numbers came back the same as they had 3 times already. The compression frequency on the Vrel message layer is off by 11%, Kor said. Somebody studied the Vrel format close enough to copy the shape of it. They didn't study it close enough to understand what's underneath. Vance turned from the console, finally. Meaning. Meaning this isn't a distress call. It's a costume wearing one. The bridge went quiet in the particular way bridges go quiet when a soldier says something a captain doesn't want to be true. Vance looked at the beacon, then at Kor. Then at the empty dark, past the forward viewport, where 400 billion years of vacuum had never once needed a reason to kill something. "You're telling me to fly 600 crew into a trap," Vance said. "I'm telling you somebody built a trap for a species that runs from teeth," Core said. "We don't run from teeth. We evolved with teeth, every day, for 4 billion years. Raise quietly. "That's a weirdly specific thing to know." "It's the only thing worth knowing about us," Core said. Vance held his gaze a long moment. She had 11 years on this bridge, and in every one of them, Core had been right about the ugly things twice as often as he'd been wrong. "If I'm flying into somebody's ambush," she said, "I want to know exactly whose." "Sector's clean of registered traffic," Hawkins reported. "Whoever built that signal wanted something with a crew and a conscience." "Then let's not disappoint them," Core said. "Set course, full burn, and get Alpha Strike suited. If this is a costume, I want to know who's wearing it before they know we noticed the stitching." Vance exhaled once through her nose, the closest thing she had to a laugh anymore. "Aye, Sergeant Major, set course for the beacon, full burn." The ironclad came about, and 6 hours of dark, silent transit began, and nobody on that bridge yet knew there were 2 more human ships bleeding into the same trap from different vectors, all of them answering the same lie, all of them about to prove that some prey species make a terrible mistake the moment they start hunting. In the armory, 3 hours later, Core stood in front of Alpha Strike Element with a tactical schematic burning on the wall behind him. Tors checked his rifle twice, out of habit, not need. Reyes checked his 3 times, out of nerves he hadn't admitted to yet. Delgado said nothing and checked nothing, because Delgado never needed to. "They'll have at least 2 vessels cloaked," Core said. "They'll let us close, spring the ambush, then hit the ironclad while she's answering it. That's the play. It's worked 43 times. "So what's different this time?" Reyes asked. "This time," Core said, "we're going to let them spring the trap. Then we're going to spring a better one." He tapped the schematic, a derelict hull engine room marked in red. "We don't go for the bridge. We don't go for medical. We go for the engines. If I'm right about what's underneath that signal, there's a power core down there doing something it was never built to do, and I want it doing something else before anybody upstairs notices we're aboard." Tors cracked his knuckles. "And if you're wrong?" "Then we're 4 people dead in an engine room instead of 600 dead in open space," Core said. "I like our odds better." Nobody laughed. Nobody was supposed to. "One more thing," Core said, and something in his voice went very still, very flat. The tone his squad had learned meant listen closer than usual. "Whatever we find down there, whatever's logged, you bring it to me first, not command me." Reyes glanced at Tors. Tors didn't glance back. Delgado's hand found the photo clipped inside his helmet just for a second, then let it go. "Yes, Sergeant Major," Reyes said. Core picked up his datapad, the crack catching the light one more time, and led them toward the shuttle bay, toward a derelict wearing a dying species voice like a mask, toward a door that was about to open on 600 years of quiet murder. The shuttle bay doors sealed behind Alpha Strike with a hiss that swallowed the last of the ready room noise. Core checked his rifle once, the way Tors had checked his 3 times, out of habit rather than doubt. Aboard the Sovereign Claw, Admiral Vorthak Krell watched the human vessel's approach vector with the particular satisfaction of a species that had done this 43 times before. His compound eyes, each facet holding some fragment of a hunt long finished, tracked the ironclad's burn signature. "They're not slowing," his operations officer reported. "Full acceleration into the beacon." Krell's mandibles clicked, a slow rhythm, almost pleased. Deathworlders never do. It was the word the Vreth used for them in the old logs, the ones who evolved on a planet that tried to kill them for 4 billion years and lost. Krell had hunted 42 other species. None of them ran toward fire. "Let them come," he said. "Let them find the ship exactly as broken as it should be." The shuttle detached from the ironclad's belly and crossed the black toward the derelict, and inside it Reyes was talking too fast, the way he always did before something bad. So what's actually wrong with it? The ship, what's it look like? Like it's dying, Kor said, convincingly. That's not comforting. Wasn't meant to be. Tors cut in flat. 60 seconds to docking. The derelict grew in the forward port, hull scorched in patterns too even to be real damage, running lights flickering in a rhythm someone had programmed to look like failure. It was good work. It would have fooled most crews. It didn't fool Kor, because Kor had spent 18 years learning what real dying looked like, and this wasn't it. The shuttle docked with a metallic shudder. The airlock cycled. 4 suited figures moved into a corridor lit by emergency strips, the air recycler wheezing on a loop that never actually ran out of air. Bridge is that way, Ray said, nodding toward a junction marked with directional lighting, bright, obvious, inviting. We're not going to the bridge, Kor said. Wrong way, Delgado said quietly. Right way, Kor said, and turned down an unlit maintenance corridor instead, the one nobody had bothered to dress up because nobody expected prey to look there. That was the moment, small, almost invisible, where the trap's architecture met its first flaw. Whoever built this ship's lie had built it for a species that ran toward light and away from dark. Alpha Strike Element did neither. They went where the story was thinnest. The corridor narrowed, opened into an engine bay that smelled of ozone and something colder underneath it, something that had never been human air. Tors found the weapons cache first, crates stacked behind a false bulkhead panel, military grade, unmarked. Sergeant Major, this isn't distress call gear. Kor crouched by the crates, ran a gloved hand along a stenciled marking he didn't recognize and didn't need to. No, it's ambush gear. Somebody built a slaughterhouse and dressed it up as a hospital. Reyes had gone quiet, which for Reyes was its own kind of alarm. The power core sat at the center of the bay, humming at a frequency too clean, too controlled, feeding something that had nothing to do with keeping a dying ship alive. There, Kor said, that's the signal generator. That's what's been screaming for help for 4 hours. So we cut it, Reyes asked. No, Kor said, we use it. 6 new contacts had already started drifting toward the beacon by then, drawn by the same lie ironclad had answered, and none of them knew yet how close they were to becoming a very different kind of trap. Tors worked the core's control panel with the particular calm of a man who had disarmed worse things in worse rooms. Redirect the array. Redirect the array, Core confirmed. Everything this thing's got, pointed at the fleet that's hiding behind it. Above them, in real space, the trap sprang exactly on schedule. 2 Vreth carriers dropped their cloak in a bloom of sudden mass on ironclad sensors, and Captain Vance did not do what 43 prior captains had done. She did not freeze, she accelerated. Helm, full burn, close the range, Vance ordered. Hawkins, I want point defense tracking anything that moves. 2 carriers decloaking, Hawkins called out. Vreth configuration matches nothing in the registry. Then let's give them something to register, Vance said. Aboard the Sovereign Claw, Krell watched the human ship do the one thing his doctrine had never modeled, his 4 arms uncrossed. They're not retreating, his officer said, a note of something new in his voice. Not quite alarm, not yet. They will, Krell said, once the shock troops board. But 600 years of hunting had taught Krell that prey species clustered when threatened, bunched together, sought the herd. It had never taught him what to do with a species that split apart on purpose, that sent 4 soldiers into the dark corridors of his own bait, while the mothership drove straight at his throat. In the engine bay, Tors finished the redirect. Power core's yours, Sergeant Major. Core keyed the array to broadcast on every frequency the sector could hear. His voice, when it went out across the black, was flat and certain. This is Sergeant Major Draven Core, UEES Ironclad. Trap confirmed. Vreth fleet coordinates attached. To any vessel receiving this, you are not being rescued. You are being hunted. Turn around. The message went out wide, farther than Kor's own fleet, farther than the Vreth had ever let a signal travel from this graveyard sector. Reyes stared at the readout. That's going to every ship in range. That's the point, Kor said. They built a lure for the compassionate. Let's see what happens when the compassionate start warning each other. Ironclad's first salvo caught the lead Vreth carrier broadside, and the ship rocked, alarms cascading through Vance's bridge in overlapping tones. Port shields at 60%, Hawkins reported. Their sensors are degraded, they're firing blind on our port flank. Then let's not be where they're aiming, Vance said, and the ironclad rolled hard, a maneuver no Vreth tactical model accounted for because no prey species had ever bothered to dodge before running. Down in the engine bay, the deck shuddered under a transmitted shockwave, dust sifting from a conduit overhead. Reyes grabbed a strut to steady himself. Delgado didn't move at all. Time to go, Kor said. Maintenance hatches, secondary route. We flank their shock troops before they know we're not where the bridge lights told them to look. They moved fast through corridors dressed for nobody, out through hatches never meant for boarding parties, and came up behind 6 Vreth soldiers converging on the engine bay, from the direction the trap's architecture expected humans to run. The fight that followed lasted 4 minutes, and never once went the way 600 years of doctrine said it should. Tors took the first 2 with controlled bursts before they'd finished registering movement behind them. Delgado put a third through a bulkhead gap with the quiet efficiency of a man who never wasted a shot on anything but killing it. Reyes froze for exactly 1/2 second too long, and Kor's hand closed on his shoulder and put him where he needed to be, and that was the only word either of them said the whole 4 minutes. When it ended, the corridor was quiet except for the ventilation hum, 3 Vreth soldiers down, 3 fallen back toward the bridge they'd never reach in time. Reyes stood over the last one, breathing hard, rifle still raised. They didn't even try to regroup. They just kept coming one at a time. Because that's how the doctrine says prey behaves, Kor said. One at a time, predictable, clustered. He looked down the corridor toward a service door humming faintly with active power. We're not that. Behind that door sat a data core, old and vast. 600 years of hunts logged in careful, methodical entries. And Kor was 3 minutes away from finding the one entry that would turn a tactical victory into something he'd carry the rest of his life. Reyes hit the breach panel before Kor gave the order, and the data core room's door tore open on a hum that filled the corridor like a held breath finally released. Sergeant Major, Tors said, already inside, already scanning. This isn't a ship's log, this is an archive. The chamber ran deeper than the hull should have allowed, rows of storage cores stacked floor to ceiling, each one humming at the same clean frequency as the signal generator above. 600 years of something. Kor stepped through the doorway and felt the temperature of the room before he felt anything else. Cold, controlled, the kind of cold that came from things built to last. Reyes, pull a manifest, Kor said. Fast. Reyes worked the nearest console, fingers moving quick over unfamiliar controls Tors had cracked, open 30 seconds earlier. Lines of Vreth text scrolled, and beneath them, a translation matrix Tors had rigged from the bridge intercept converted them in real time. It's records, Reyes said. Ship names, species, dates. There's, Sergeant Major, there's hundreds of entries. Kor crossed the room and looked at the screen himself. Before the number found him, before the name found him, he did something small. He set his datapad down on the console edge, the cracked corner catching the light one more time, the same motion he'd made 100 times before a briefing, 100 times before bad news, an old habit that didn't know yet it was about to mean something different. Then he scrolled. Entry 2194, Reyes read aloud, uncertain whether he should be reading it aloud at all. Dathrani Relief Conv, 6 vessels, disposition, processed, he swallowed. There's a column here, it just says processed. over and over. Keep going, Core said. His voice hadn't changed. Not yet. Rays kept going, and the room stayed quiet except for the console's soft click of entries scrolling past. Dozens of them. A species worth of names reduced to a single administrative word. Then the screen stopped scrolling on its own, because Rays had stopped scrolling, because Rays had found it before Core did and didn't know how to say it. Sergeant Major. Core looked. Entry 2847, see date 14 months prior. Location K of Reach, Sector 12. Vessel, UES Meridian Dawn. Personnel, Dr. Jennifer Way. Disposition, processed. The room did not go quiet, because it had already been quiet. What changed was smaller than that. Torres stopped checking his rifle. Delgado's hand found the photo in his helmet liner and stayed there. Reyes stepped back from the console like it had bitten him. Core read the entry twice. He did not read it a third time, because he didn't need to, because 14 months of silence had just found its name, and the name was his sister's, and the word underneath it was the same word underneath every other name in that column. Processed. He picked the datapad back up. The crack was still there. Everything else about the moment had changed. Sergeant Major. Tor's careful now, the way a man gets careful around a wound he's just seen for the first time. You good? No, Core said. It was the only honest thing he'd said all day, and he said it flat, the way he said everything, and then he did what he always did with the things that could break him. He put it somewhere he could use it later. Pull the whole core, he said. Every entry. Package it, encrypt it, and get it ready to broadcast the second we're clear. Broadcast to who? Reyes asked. Everyone, Core said. Every species with a name in this column. He didn't say his sister's name again. He didn't need to. Somewhere above them, 6 ships that had answered the same kind of lie were about to learn exactly what they'd almost become. On the Ironclad's bridge, Vance watched the tactical plot shift in ways that hadn't been in anyone's briefing. Hawkins, talk to me. 4 additional contacts, Hawkins said. All broadcasting IDs. They picked up Core's warning transmission and they're not running from it. They're converging. Converging where? Here, Hawkins said. Captain, that's 6 human vessels total in this sector inside the hour, including us. Vance stared at the plot a long moment. 6 ships, none of them ordered here, none of them under joint command, all of them choosing the same coordinates because a stranger's voice had told them the truth about a trap instead of leaving them to walk into it blind. Get Fleet Admiral Ewan on the line, she said. He's going to want to know his fleet just grew by 4 ships nobody sent. Aboard the Sovereign Claw, Krell's operations officer delivered the same numbers with considerably less composure. Admiral, sensor sweep confirms 6 human vessels, converging on our position, coordinated, but not under unified command structure we can identify. Krell's 4 arms had not uncrossed since the boarding began. His compound eyes, each facet a fragment of some hunt long finished, fixed on the tactical plot like it had personally insulted him. They're not supposed to warn each other, he said. Sir. Prey doesn't cooperate across species lines, Krell said, and for the first time in 600 years, the words came out sounding less like doctrine and more like something he needed to be true. That's not in the pattern. The bait ship's data core has gone silent, his officer reported. No telemetry. The boarding party isn't retreating toward the bridge or medical. They're still in the lower decks. Krell's mandibles clicked, slow, and for the first time the sound carried something other than satisfaction. Reroute the second carrier, he said. Full intercept. I want that boarding party stopped before. He didn't finish the sentence, because there was nothing left in his doctrine to finish it with. A predator who had never once needed to explain what came after before now found the thought had nowhere to go. Back in the data core room, Tors finished the encryption package with 3 minutes to spare, and a face that had gone paler than Core had seen it in 3 years of deployments together. Package is ready, Tor said. Full archive. 600 years, every entry, every species. Then we're not just walking out of here with a tactical win, Ray said, quieter than before. We're walking out with... He stopped, looked at Core, didn't finish it either. With the truth, Core said. That's worth more than a wrecked carrier. A wrecked carrier they replace. This, he nodded at the Core, this they can't replace. This is the whole Empire's spine, and we're about to hand it to everyone they ever hunted. Delgado, who had said almost nothing the entire mission, spoke then, low and even. Sergeant Major, what are you going to do with hers? He meant the entry. He meant the name. He didn't need to say either word. Core looked at the datapad in his hand, at the crack that had outlived Kessel Station and outlived every deployment since. I'm going to make sure it's the last one in that column that ever gets called processed and nothing else, he said. Move out. We're done here. They left the archive room the way they'd entered it, through unlit maintenance corridors nobody had dressed up for a boarding party, and somewhere above them, the Sovereign Claw's second carrier began a full intercept course that would arrive 4 minutes too late to matter, because the thing that mattered had already been copied, encrypted, and sent, and no admiral in 600 years of hunting had ever built a doctrine for prey that got away with the evidence. Core keyed his comm as they moved. Ironclad, this is Alpha Strike. Data package inbound. And Captain, tell Admiral Ewan he's about to have 6 ships and a very bad afternoon for a Vreth admiral who's had a good 6 centuries. Vance's voice came back steady, but something in it had shifted too. Copy that, Sergeant Major. Get back to the shuttle. We'll want you on the bridge for what happens next. Negative, Core said. Change of plans. I'm not going back to the shuttle. A pause, Sergeant Major. There's a throne on that flagship with an admiral's name on it, Core said, and I've got an entry number he needs to hear said out loud. The corridor to the Sovereign Claw's bridge should have been guarded. It wasn't, not really. The 2 Vreth soldiers posted at the junction took one look at the man walking toward them with a scarred datapad in one hand and an archive already broadcast to 6 species behind him, and they stepped aside. Not out of respect. Out of the particular confusion of soldiers whose doctrine had never modeled a prey animal that had already won. Core didn't look at them. He'd stopped needing to look at things that weren't in his way anymore. Before the bridge doors, he paused, just for a second. He checked the strap on his rifle out of pure habit, the kind of small ordinary motion a man makes 100 times a day without thinking about it, the same motion he'd have made walking into any briefing, any drop, any Tuesday. It meant nothing. It meant everything. Then the doors opened. 5 meters. He'd counted them once already, in a version of this moment that had already happened, that the whole galaxy behind him was now living the aftermath of. He crossed them again, and this time when he reached the throne, he had 6 ships in sensor range instead of a rumor of them, an archive already delivered instead of a threat to deliver one, and a sister's name that had stopped being a wound and started being a verdict. Entry 2847C, he said again, because some things are worth saying twice when the second time means something different. The Meridian Dawn, my sister. She was right to answer it. Krell's mandibles had gone still. Behind Core, the tactical plot lit with 6 confirmed hulls, and this time nobody on that bridge mistook them for coincidence. Your archive, Krell said, and for the first time in 600 years his voice carried something that wasn't command. You've already sent it. To every government with a name in that column, Core said. 43 species, Admiral. You kept excellent records. You misunderstand what you've done, Krell said, and even now, even here, some fragment of 6 centuries of doctrine tried to reassert itself. We are the Vreth. We have hunted since before your species learned fire. You have destroyed 1 carrier and 1 bait ship, nothing more. You misunderstand what we are, Core said, and his voice didn't rise because it never did, because the loudest thing in that room had always been how quiet he stayed. We are not prey. We are what evolved on a planet that spent 4 billion years trying to kill everything that lived on it. We are not what walks into a trap and dies there. We are not what runs. We are not what forgets. 3 beats. Plain words. Krell's compound eyes caught the lights of the bridge and threw them back 1,000 times. 1,000 reflections of the man who had just finished saying the truest thing anyone had ever told him. Your operations officer already knows what's coming, Kor said. Say it. The officer's voice, when it came, had lost whatever composure 600 years had built into it. Admiral, 41 governments have opened emergency channels. 2 have already recalled their trade envoys from Vreth space. Krell said nothing. There was nothing left in the doctrine to say. You're not going to die today, Kor said, and something in that sentence landed harder than a threat would have. That would be easy. That would let your empire call you a martyr and keep hunting under a new admiral's name. Instead, you're going to answer for 600 years of processed names in front of every species that's in that column. A galactic tribunal, not a human one. Theirs. You would let me live, Krell said, and it might have been the first honest question he'd asked in 6 centuries, to hand me to them. I would, Kor said, because what you did to the Jarl and the Dethrani and the other 41, that's not mine to forgive or finish. That belongs to them. He set the datapad down on the arm of the throne one more time. Not a threat, a fact. You caught the one species in this galaxy that answers a distress call, he said, and knows what to do when it's a trap. That's the mistake that ends you, not a fleet, a filing cabinet. Somewhere behind him, Reyes was already relaying to the Ironclad that the flagship's shock troops had stood down without a shot fired, and nobody on that bridge yet knew it would take the Vreth Empire less time to collapse than it had taken Kor to walk 5 meters. The weeks that followed moved the way aftermaths always do, slower than the fight, faster than the grief. The tribunal convened aboard a neutral station in Kiev Reach, delegations from 43 species filling a chamber built for exactly this kind of reckoning, and Admiral Vorthak Krell stood in the center of it without his throne, without his carriers, with nothing left but an archive that had already told the whole galaxy who he was. Kor didn't attend as a witness. He attended as the man who'd found the archive, gave his account in under 4 minutes, plain words, no embellishment, and left before the delegations began arguing over jurisdiction and restitution, because that part wasn't his to carry either. Fleet Admiral Ewan offered him a formal commendation. Kor declined it, quietly, the way he declined most things that came with paperwork attached. Captain Vance found him in the Ironclad's small records office 3 days after the tribunal opened, terminal humming, datapad resting beside the keyboard, crack still catching the light the same way it always had. You didn't have to file that alone, she said. I know, Kor said. He'd already written it. He read it back once before submitting it, the way he read everything twice and only ever said things once. The Meridian Dawn was taken 14 months ago in Kiev Reach, Sector 12. Dr. Jennifer Way was listed as victim 2847. See, she was responding to what she believed was a genuine distress signal. He paused there, the cursor waiting, and added the only line that had ever mattered. She was right to answer it. Vance didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. She left him with the door closed behind her, and the office quiet except for the low tone of a system logging a file that would outlast every admiral, every tribunal, every empire built on 600 years of the same patient lie. Kor closed the console. He set the datapad down beside it, screen dark now, crack still there, the same crack that had survived Kessel Station and 11 combat drops and a corridor 5 meters long that had ended an empire. It didn't hold a tactical map anymore. It held a number. The number had become a sentence, and the sentence was the only thing he needed it to carry now. He picked up his gear. Somewhere past the station's viewport, the dark between the stars kept doing what it always did, sitting silent, waiting, indifferent to who answered it and who didn't. There were still distress signals out there, real ones this time. He went back to work.